Zoom. The call may only be provided live at the city council meeting.
Councilmember Barbadillo. Vice Mayor Chua.
Here.
Councilmember Lian. Here. Councilmember Fan. Mayor Montana.
And I'm here. Now we'll rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Ladies and gentlemen, our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Item on the agenda or public comment may be provided by the city council meeting in person. Public forum will be limited to 3 minutes. City.
We have two public speakers. The first is going to be Stephen Malva, followed by Kulwant Singh.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Good. Stephen Ballfall, longtime resident of Milpitas. Welcoming to all people of all abilities, ages, and ethnic backgrounds. Sound like a great description for pickleball. It is. It's also the opening statement in the City of Milpitas Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And I can't think of a better sport that does that job than pickleball. Pickleball is a sport that's dramatically growing. It's really exploding in popularity. I think you can't even see a commercial about somebody holding the pickleball anymore. And we're here to stay, the pickleball group. We can't be ignored. We're here to work with the city and make pickleball successful here. And it needs to be a part of this and future CIP plans. You know, it's that big a sport. Milpitas Pickleball Club is here and willing to work and assist the city in any way we can. Like I said, we're very dedicated and we're willing to work with you to grow it. And we're going to be continuing to grow to be a stronger voice, whether it's the rest of this year, November, future time. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Next is Kulwant Singh.
Kulwant Singh, been a resident of Milpitas for the last 33 years and proud assistant coach of the Milpitas Boys Varsity Soccer team this year, actually last 3 years. On behalf of the Milpitas Pickleball Club, we have two asks. One is for any additional funding for the Hall Park renovations. And then the second ask is that there be a long-term plan for more pickleball courts in Milpitas. Last year, I spoke at this meeting about pickleball in Milpitas. Since then, the participation numbers have exploded, both here and nationally. As Steve mentioned, pickleball players are very diverse. Last year at this time, the Facebook Milpitas Pickleball Group had 387 members. We have 669 right now. The WhatsApp group last year at this time had 304 members. Now we have 442. The WhatsApp Gill Park group had 50 members at this time last year. We now have 168. The Milpitas High School has established a pickleball club on the campus. This group is growing. Recently, there was a Hall Park survey and 670 people responded, the majority being pickleball players. Almost 60 pickleball players attended the city council meeting last week. There were over 100 pickleball players in attendance at the Hall Park community meeting 2 weeks ago. Okay, the Milpitas pickleball group is getting larger and larger. Last year, through the CIP process, 100,000 was allocated for Hall Park renovations. The pickleball community thanks you for that funding. We ask that you try and find us some additional funding so some additional renovations can be made at Hall Park. The 100,000 is not enough for everything that we need. Again, the second ask is that there's some long-term planning as far as pickleball facilities in the city of Milpitas. Again, on behalf of the pickleball community, thank you for your support. I hope you will continue the improvements of pickleball facilities in Milpitas. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Okay, anyone else?
There are no additional speakers, Mayor.
So now, we will move on to the announcement of conflict of interest. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I ask the mayor and each council member whether he or she has any financial or personal conflict of interest related to any of the items on tonight's agenda.
Councilmember Barbadillo.
None.
Vice Mayor Chua.
None.
Councilmember Leanne.
None.
Mayor Montano.
None.
Let the record reflect no reported conflicts. Mayor and members of City Council, please disclose any campaign contributions of $100 or more received. The mayor and members of City Council, please disclose any campaign contributions of $100 or more received within the last 12 months from any of the parties entering into contracts with the city on tonight's agenda. And I do recognize that there aren't actually contracts on tonight's agenda, but that is our policy to read this at every meeting.
Councilmember Barbadillo.
None.
Vice Mayor Chua.
None.
Councilmember Leanne.
None.
Mayor Montano.
None.
Thank you, Mayor. Let the record reflect no reported conflicts.
Thank you very much. And now going on to the code of conduct. Mayor, would you like to read that?
Sure.
Milpitas City Council Code of Conduct, which is very important, and we adhere to this code of conduct. Be respectful and courteous. Model civility. Avoid surprises. Praise publicly and criticize privately. Focus on the issue, not the person. Refrain from electronic devices while on the council diet. Disclose conflicts of interest and affiliations related to the agenda items. Separate governing from campaigning. The council speaks with one voice after making policy on issues. Respect the line between policy and administration. Council will hold one another accountable to comply with this code of conduct. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to make for the agenda? So seeing none,
Seeing none, move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
So it has been approved by Vice Mayor Chua and seconded by Councilmember Barbadillo. And so now we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Barbadillo.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chua.
Aye.
Councilmember Leanne. Aye. Mayor Montano.
And I'm an aye. Thank you very much. And so now moving on to the agenda items. We will receive presentation on proposed 5-year 2025-2029 capital improvement program and provide feedback to staff. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Montano. 2 weeks ago, back on January 30th, we held a study session like this with the council for the operating budget, but we're here tonight of course for the capital improvement program for CIP. It covers actually a 5-year time period from 2025 through 2029 inclusive. I want to just I'll turn the time over a minute for the presentation, but I want to take a moment to let the council know I feel that we have a exceptionally strong team over our capital improvement program. I think you all recognize this for a number of years. We've had Michael Severa, our CIP program manager, putting together this program. He's very well organized and has been working over the past several months with all of the department directors as well as the city manager's office on putting this CIP program, proposed CIP program together. had, general supervision from the Public Works Director, Christian Lorenzo, and also our Assistant City Manager, Matt Kano. I just, want to thank all of them for the hard work that they put into tonight's presentation, and to all the department directors who have provided their input as well. You have all the department directors here tonight. I believe our finance director is joining us remotely. And they're here to help answer any questions about projects from their respective departments. I also want to acknowledge our finance staff that are here too. We have our assistant finance director and also our budget director here, or budget manager here to help us, Christine. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Michael Severa, and I believe that both he and our assistant city manager will provide the presentation and follow with questions, answers. Michael.
Thank you, Ned, for the introduction. Appreciate the kind words. Good evening, Mayor Montano, Vice Mayor Chua, City Council members, Plan and Barbara. And mentioned, my name is Michael Severa, Public Works Division Manager of Engineering that oversees design and construction section and administers the capital budget for the city. This evening, we'll be presenting the proposed 2025-29 capital improvement program. During the study session, we'll discuss the accomplishments of this past year, present the work plan or milestones that we're anticipating to be completed the upcoming fiscal year, review the proposed capital budget for 2025-29 capital improvement program, review city council referrals, have a council discussion, and then staff will make recommendations. Accomplishments. Here now we'll talk about the next few slides. I'll highlight the accomplishments for various departments this past year. The Mobile Emergency Operations Center vehicle was delivered in early February. Police and fire departments will use this vehicle during lengthy field deployments to provide a safe operational environment for the staff. In August of 21, the City Council approved approximately $4.4 million in ARPA funding for improvement at 20 parks. Public Works completed the first phase of improvements at 9 parks, which includes Sereno, John McDermott, O'Toole, Elms, Park Metro Central and East, Pinewood, Selwood, Sunny Hills, Augustine, and Tom Evans parks. The work was focused on immediate health and safety repairs to playground equipment and surfaces and miscellaneous repairs. This phase spent approximately $1.1 million of the funding. Phase 2 will be discussed further in this presentation. The traffic engineering section successfully completed the annual street resurfacing project, which included streets in the neighborhood of North Park Victoria, north of Dixon Landing Road, and Selwyn and Shirley, and also resurfaced Mount Shasta Road. These neighborhoods are highlighted in the center image. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got resurfacing. There we go. Okay. So the neighborhoods are highlighted there in the center image of the slide. The project also repaired various sidewalks and driveways, installed 88 curb ramps, upgraded approximately 3 miles of bike lines. The street selected annually for resurfacing is based on recommendations from the MTC Pavement Management Program, which is updated biannually. The city's goal is to maintain PCI value of 70 or better, which is the borderline between fair and good condition. The city's current PCI value is 71, which indicates that the city street network is in good condition. Penitencia Creek Linear Park and Trail. A vision of the metro-specific plan is starting to take shape in the Tango District, which was across the BART station. The Planning Department and Land Development section work closely with the developers of Capital 650 and Anton Development to provide public access to the internal parks and construct a linear park and trail adjacent to Penitencia Creek, as shown in orange in the center image there. The trail will lead to the future pedestrian overcrossing bridge over Montague Expressway, which provides connectivity to nearby neighborhoods, schools, parks, the Great Mall, and the BART station. This bridge is currently under design, but is not funded at this time. Staff is continuing to explore grant opportunities to construct this project. To the left of the creek, which is the blue line there, staff is working with the developer to complete the road connection between Sango and Terra Court, shown in the darker red line. Engineering is currently managing the project to extend South Milpitas Boulevard across the creek, which includes the construction of a bridge. The project received a federal earmark in 2022 to support the construction of the roads. In the meantime, we'll be starting master planning of the parks highlighted there in green, which will be constructed after the road network is completed. Santa Clara Valley Water District just completed flood protection improvements to increase flood capacity and reduce the flood risks for the residents and businesses of Milpitas along portions of Calera and Penitencia Creeks. The city coordinated with the district on permitting improvements in the city right-of-way, trails, and pump stations. City Council adopted the citywide travel safety report this past summer that assessed the safety of the traffic throughout the city. The report provides a framework for recommended safety improvements and identifies potential grants to pursue for funding. This past summer, the first Gateway Welcome sign was installed at Arco Station that incorporates the city's new community mark. We're working with Rotten Robbie at gas station and Waterstone HOA to install a similar sign. The signs will be located at the intersection of Main Street, Trade Zone Boulevard, and on California Circle in front of 880 off-ramp. There at the bottom right of the slide is a filtration treatment system that was installed at Main Left Pump Station to address air quality management district concerns of odorous compounds being released into the environment from the station's operation. There are a few notable projects that were completed. Recreation and Community Service Department is managing the installation of an art sculpture titled Circle of Time at Jose Higuera Park, which is underway and to be completed soon. The IT department completed the redesign of the city website and is leading the replacement of the mobile computer terminals within the police department fleet. Engineering selected a design consultant to begin the preliminary design, community outreach, and environmental review for the improvements of the softball field at Cardozo Park. The Operations Division of Public Works completed various city infrastructure maintenance work, such as the repair of the HVAC system at City Hall and Public Works buildings, replacement of the sand filters, an AC unit at Sports Center. They resurfaced the dance studio and auditorium floors at Sports Center and Senior Center, repaired the trail adjacent to the Coyote Creek behind the main lift station, and completed the annual sidewalk repair project to address safety and trip hazards to minimize the city's risks and liability, and continue maintenance and improvements to various signalized intersections for safety purposes. So now we'll talk about the work plan and milestones that are scheduled to be completed in 24-25. As I earlier mentioned, City Council approved approximately $4.4 million in ARPA funding for improvements at 20 parks. The park section just completed the first phase of improvements. The remaining funding of $3.3 million will be allocated to phase 2. Engineering will be completing the bid process next week for short-term improvements at 13 parks, which are listed at the right side of the slide. We'll bring forward the contract award for council consideration in March in order to start construction no later than May and complete the work by the end of the year. The work will focus on improving ADA access, pathways, picnic areas, playground areas, site furnishings, and restrooms. There are a few key notable projects and milestones that we are anticipating to be completed this coming fiscal year. The traffic engineering section will complete the annual street resurfacing project that includes resurfacing of the first phase of Great Mall Parkway from 880 to McCandless Drive and Thompson Street and Court. Also, next year's street resurfacing project is currently in design, which includes phase 2 of the Great Mall Parkway from McCandless to Montague, Tasman Drive from Alder to 880, Alder Drive to Tasman from Tasman Drive to Barber Lane. They all are also anticipating completing the design of the bicycle improvement project to start construction in 25. The project received an earmark funding of $1 million as part of the Caltrans 22 priority budget. The design construction section will be completing the installation of a new HVAC system at Albizo Adobe House to control the room temperature to make it suitable for visitation and prevent the audio video system from overheating during warm days. We are also anticipating to complete the design of Fire Station 1 module building replacement and the water line replacement in Dempsey, where these facilities have reached the end of their service line. And we'll complete the facility design of McCandless Well, which will provide an additional water resource to diversify the city's water system and serve the Gateway, Main Street, and Metro specific plan area. All these 3 projects are anticipated to start construction in the first half of 25. The planning department is anticipating to adopt the Milpitas Gateway Main Street specific plan, which will align with council priorities, preserving the historic significance of Main Street, having Calaveras Boulevard be a primary gateway into Milpitas, and target additional commercial office development along Abbott Avenue frontage. They also anticipate completing the update to the zoning ordinance, so it's consistent with the great general plan policies and the state law regarding land use, regulations, and design standards. Recreation and Community Service Department will complete the artist selection and design of the art mural at Dixon Landing Park. It will be located at the entry of the structure and snack shack. IT department is managing the replacement of the audio visual system in council chambers that is scheduled to occur during council summer recess. And Public Works facilities will be completing the roof repairs at Sports Center and City Library. Now we'll discuss the 5-year budget of the capital improvement program. Before I present the capital budget, let me explain the core foundation of the CIP. The program is a comprehensive 5-year budgeting and planning tool for infrastructure needs that is updated annually. The document includes priority city capital projects for new infrastructure and repairs and replacement of existing infrastructure. It outlines the improvements, associated expenditures, their funding sources, and anticipated project schedules. The document is organized into 6 categories: community, parks, streets, water, sewer, and storm drain improvements. Only the funding requests in the first year of the CIP are funded, which will be effective the 1st of July. Projects in subsequent 4 years may be partially funded based on projected available funding or not funded at all. As shown here are the 7 priority areas adopted by City Council. The CIP is completed in conformance with these priorities. The scope and funding changes to the existing projects and new projects requested by departments are reviewed and prioritized by the Engineering Division and Finance Department for conformance with council priorities, available funding, and resources. Criteria for evaluating funding requests are listed on this slide, which are: does it address an immediate health and safety concern? Does it align with council priorities? Will it be funded by a grant? Does it improve operation efficiency? Is it required to meet the legal mandate, a legal mandate? Is there a sufficient department resource to manage the project? What is the project schedule? What is the fund source to fund the project? the request, and how does it impact operating budget? Once we establish a list of funding requests, we'll review it with the city manager's office. And then we'll bring a recommendation to city council for consideration and approval of the capital budget. During the city council budget study session on January 30th, staff reported that it does not foresee a reduction in the current service levels based on new revenue information, labor contracts, and various funding and expenditure strategies. Staff projects a balanced budget for fiscal year 24 and 25, but projects a deficit starting in fiscal year 26 and 27, prior to the sunset of Measure F in 2029. Due to the aging city's infrastructure, such as buildings, parks, public safety systems, storm drain infrastructure, technology systems, which is primarily supported by the general fund, staff is recommending using a portion of the general fund facilities replacement reserve to start addressing these needs. The 5-year CIP that is brought forward tonight consists of 149 projects for an estimated budget amount of nearly $243 million. The chart is a breakdown of estimated costs with associated number of projects for each category. The value of the city's infrastructure needing funding over the last 4 years of the budget is estimated at $58 million, which is associated with projects in the community, parks, and streets category. Here is a table. It's all right. Here is a table that summarizes the estimate project cost, projected available funding, and the funding means per fiscal year over the 5-year budget. The first row there is the estimated project cost for a total at nearly $243 million, followed by the projected available funding, which is estimated nearly at $165 million. Then it's followed by external financing, such as a bond or a grant, the amount of $21 million. The bottom row there is the value of insufficient or no available funding for projects, which is estimated nearly $58 million. Here is a summary of the proposed funding for each category for fiscal year 24-25, which will be available starting July 1st. Staff is recommending to fund 47 projects for an estimated amount of $36.1 million. Majority of the funding will be allocated to projects in community, streets, sewer, and water categories. The next 6 slides, I'll present the 47 projects that are being recommended to be funded this coming fiscal year. Each table shows the project, the recommended funding, and the funding source. The next few slides are the 17 projects proposed to be funded in the community category. Here's a list of the proposed funding for existing projects. Majority of the projects are for the upkeep of the city's existing infrastructure. As you review this list, I would like to highlight a few projects. Majority of the funding for city building improvement project is for police department's men's locker room enhancement to the restroom and shower, and an expansion of the female locker room to accommodate the increasing staff that has occurred over the past decade. The funding for the city building HVAC system will replace 6 units in the sports center complex, which has reached the end of their service life. Also, the funding for the city parking lot rehab project will resurface the parking lots at Cardoza, Dixon Landing, and Hall Parks. Here is a list of 6 proposed new community projects. As you review these lists, I'll highlight a few projects. The planning department obtained a PEA planning grant to fund the impacts fee study and sense of plan for the Milpitas Gateway Main Street specific plan. It will identify streetscapes, transportation, utility improvements along Main Street, create a basic infrastructure plan for the area, and then establish a developer impact fee. The air handlers at City Hall has exceeded its service life and requires replacement. Last April, Public Works conducted major repairs to the system. The funding for this project is recommended to be allocated from the general fund facilities replacement reserve. The 40-year-old community center roof has exceeded its service life and also requires replacement. The funding for engineering to work with facilities and recreation and community service to determine operational impacts and obtain a consultant to determine scope of work and project budget. The City Hall Fountain and Landscape Renovation Project funding will provide the preliminary design to determine a project budget for restoring the landscaping and converting the fountain, pond, and waterfall to a more usable open space for community events and gatherings within City Hall campus. Here are 5 projects in the park category being recommended to be funded in the amount of $1.1 million. 2 of these projects are for the upkeep of the existing park infrastructure, and 2 projects are being proposed to be added to the CIP, as shown in bold text. The planning department also obtained a PDA planning grant to start public engagement and conceptual designs of the parks and trails in the Innovation District as identified in the Metro specific plan. Staff is proposing a new project to start conceptual design for the renovations of the playground at Senate Park. The conceptual design will identify infrastructure needs such as storm drain improvements and ADA compliance and determine a project budget. Here's a list of 12 projects that are being recommended to be funded in streets category in the amount of $8.9 million. 8 projects are dedicated to the upkeep of the existing infrastructure, and 2 projects will be added to this section. As you review, I would like to mention a few projects. The funding of Milpitas Street utility undergrounding is to retain a consultant to assist staff to acquire easements for necessary improvements to underground overhead utilities between Corning and Curtis Avenue, which is one of several PGA requirements. The funding for traffic study and safety improvement project is for the programming and planning of the traffic safety improvements as identified in the most recent adopted citywide traffic study report. Staff is also recommending to fund the design for the installation of the streetlights along Hammond Way to improve public safety. Next slide. Here is a list of water projects being proposed to be funded in the amount of $5.2 million by the water funds. I'll pause here for a few seconds for your review. Moving on here. Here are 5 sewer projects being recommended to be funded by sewer funds in the amount of $9.3 million. Majority of the funding is for the city contribution to the rehabilitation project at the city San Jose wastewater facility. A notable funding recommendations for design, environmental review, and right-of-way acquisition for the Force Main A project. Also, there are 2 storm drain projects being recommended to be funded by Storm Drain Fund, the amount of $600,000. A new project we are recommending to add to the CIP is the study for alternative improvements of the historic funding on May Street. Here is a summary of the funding distribution per each category for fiscal year 24-25. That totals $36 million. I'll give you a few seconds to review this slide. Here are 11 projects that are being recommended to be funded by the General Government CIP Fund in the amount of $4.7 million, where 9 projects are for existing projects are listed to the left, and 2 are for new projects listed to the right. I'll pause here for a few seconds. That's it. Now I'll hand over the presentation to Nat.
Thank you, Michael. We just have a handful more slides left. And so as a summary, Michael covered some of this information, but we want to highlight this and continue to make sure it's something we always talk about as we're looking at where we invest our limited capital fund dollars in the city. So the total backlog of identified repair, replacement, and new project needs that we have identified through our CIP process or master planning process is $484 million. It's the bottom right-hand portion of the table. You can see 279 million of that is just to repair the existing infrastructure that we have in our city. And 204 million of that is for new identified infrastructure for our city. And this is just important to continue to talk about and continue to remember as we look at how to invest our limited dollars and how we look to fund some of these bigger ticket items in the future, either through impact fees such as in the metro area, continuing to keep up with rate increases, which we did last spring for sanitary and water, and continuing to do that every 5 years to make sure we can continue to fully fund those programs. And then at some point in our future, possible general obligation bond for some of our bigger ticket items. As a summary, some of the projects that we are working on right now, but have insufficient funding currently to complete are on this slide. Carzoza Park softball fields as an example. The city council did fund the design portion, the design phase, and so that is underway now. We will have to continue to look to find construction money in the coming years. The Main Street Light project, we were successful in obtaining $500,000 in the last federal government community funding process for Main Street, and we're going to be hopefully asking for more funding from the state and or federal government this year to complete that first phase of the project from Carlo to Corning. Some additional projects that we still need to identify funding for on this slide as well. Sandalwood Park renovation. We did design Sandalwood Park a few years back. We still need to find money for construction of Sandalwood Park. This has been on our request for possible community funding from the state or the federal governments. We haven't received that money yet. We are continuing to be on the lookout for potential grants for Sandalwood as well, since it is a shovel-ready project.
Is it by the high school? By the high school.
And the good news is we've designed it. We just need to find the money to do the construction renovations. There's also funding needs beyond the 5-year CIP, such as traffic safety improvements. As Michael mentioned, we recently approved the travel safety plan at City Council, which allows us to have this document that we can use to go for grants and have when project money becomes available. There's some big ticket items in the travel safety plan for some intersections, but there's a number of smaller cost items as well. In total, the improvements, if we were to do everything, is $7.5 million. But again, we are starting to try and put away some money to do some of those improvements and continue to apply for grants. This next slide is a brief summary of our parks. In our master plan, there's identified 24 parks that are in good to fair condition, green as we go left to right, 12 that are in poor to critical condition. Additionally, the report split the funding into 2 categories: the high priority $8 million category and the longer term renovation category of $75 million. To date with ARPA, we have programmed $4.4 million towards the high priority areas, but we still have a gap of $3.6 million to fund all those original $8 million worth of high priority areas in our parks. We will continue to look at investing more in parks to address these infrastructure needs. And as Michael mentioned, we will be coming to the council in March with a discussion about, or with hopefully the recommendation on awarding the ARPA Parks Phase 2 projects. And we can have further discussion on park needs at that time as well. Okay. Next few slides, our final slides, just to talk about and remind us of some of the city council referrals that we've been discussing. And want to make sure there's a reminder of those, and that we're here to answer any questions as part of this budget study session. So on this slide are 2 projects that we have been city council referrals as priorities, and we do have funding recommended in the budget. The first is pickleball. We do have $100,000 that was allocated by the mayor and city council last year. It's possible, depending on the final recommendation of the mayor and city council, we may need to add a little bit of money to this to accomplish what council ends up deciding in March we want to accomplish, if anything, at Hall Park. And so we'll definitely be ready when we come to council, likely on March 19th, to discuss this further, but we may need to increase this investment by a little bit, depending on the final decision of the city council in March. Main Street infrastructure projects, specifically the flooding, as you all know, anytime We get an atmospheric river, the main street in front of the library and a little south of the library floods pretty quickly because that storm system just does not have the capacity to take the water and drain fast enough during an atmospheric river. And so we are recommending a very thorough analysis of design options as part of this proposed budget so that we can create that fix that our city needs for the future on Main Street. And so that's a $500,000 recommendation from the storm fund in this current budget. These next slides are items that we do not have any recommended funding at this time in the proposed budget, but depending on how these items evolve in time, they may need capital funding in the future. So we wanted to make sure to have them on the presentation tonight in case there's any questions. Exploring the possible naming of the library on Main Street, we will do an exploration process. Depending on how that exploration process ends up, if we do change the name, there would be a cost to the signage and everything. And so we're not ready to have any estimates right now, but we wanted to flag that for a future potential need. Similar to the Arts Commission request to explore alternatives for the statue, the Minuteman statue in front of City Hall. That is something per the operating budget study session. We will be referring to the Arts Commission for discussion, and depending on the end result of those discussions, there could be a future capital need there. A few other items that may have future capital needs, depending on the final results of the staff analysis and city council discussion that are being tracked on our priority list, are possible options for the teen center, as well as the child care center, or possible options for child care center at the community center. Two additional items that of city council referrals: a Main Street lighting and undergrounding project. At this time, we're not recommending any additional city CIP money go towards a Main Street lighting project. However, we are pushing that as one of our priorities with the state and federal, for the state especially, for the community earmarks. And so I'm hopeful we are successful adding to the $500,000 we received last year from the federal government so that we can start that lighting project. And then the next item is a community garden at Pasona and Adobe Avenue. This was a referral from last year's budget process to potentially look at the vacant lot there and what we can do. At this time, given the other park needs in the city, we are not recommending adding any money to this in this budget, but we want to continue to list it here for if there's any questions. In conclusion, a couple more slides here. We have, as Michael mentioned, 47 projects funded in the proposed 24-25 budget, totaling $36 million in the upcoming fiscal year, and a total between what's budgeted and the needs, some of that unfunded, is $243 million plan of things we would wish to accomplish over the next 5 years. As mentioned before, that does include a funding gap for $58 million for those approved projects. And there's 14 of those projects are newly added to the CIP. The next steps today, we're in February. And so we've got the proposed CIP presentation to you. And then we have the Parks Commission and the Planning Commission next month. We will review this with them as well for conformance and any feedback they have. And then our goal is to be in front of you on April 16th for consideration and adoption of the 5-year CIP. So we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Matt, for their presentation. And now it's time for questions from the city council. Any questions?
No. Parks, CIP, parks projects. Do we know how much is spent out of the 4.4 million ARP money? Do we know that?
I believe it's $1.1 million.
And I think you have a slide that shows that.
$1.1 million.
Yes, Vice Mayor, we have, the projects are substantially complete. We have a balance from the appropriation of $120,000 left.
When I suggested and the city council approved during the ARPA allocation phase, the very first part that came to my attention because the resident took me there. He showed me how bad the park. And it's still the same today. It's been 3 years. And I looked, and there's a Senate Park there. And the money for the study, for the design, is coming from the general fund. Correct me if I'm wrong, when I look at the slide. What happened to the allocation of, from ARPA?
So I'll start and then turn over to Michael. So we have roughly, Michael and I are looking at it earlier today, so correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but we have about almost $500,000 in ARPA phase 2 project allocated to Senate. And so that project is out to bid right now. That does not include the playground, so Michael can provide more details. But there's about $500,000. So when we come to you, likely on March 19th to suggest award of the ARPA phase 2 project, there's about between $450,000 and $500,000 that is currently allocated towards Senate as part of the ARPA money for phase 2.
I don't get it because when it was prioritized, we prioritized the parks. There were like 12 or 15 parks with the top 3 to 4, if I remember, maybe 5, with really bad, unsafe. You can't use it. Those are the red parks. Okay, and there's a yellow and a green parks out of the 15. Senate was like number 1 or number 2. I don't get why nothing was done.
I do want to say that from a construction standpoint, because the improvements were likely larger and needed more design work, that's why there was a, well, Michael, actually, what can you explain how things were divided between phase 1 and phase 2?
Sure, no problem. So phase 1 was already off the shelf plan that was done a few years ago or during the Parks Master Plan. So that project was able to move a lot faster than the one in engineering. The engineering takes a planning, a design, and then a construction phase, which spans roughly about 18 to 24 months. So we're at the bidding phase of the project, which is about, the 12 to 18 month phase here. We could not at the beginning, due to our resources and our current workload, finishing up McCandless Park and the fire station, the Longs Park. After we completed that, we shift gears and got into the design of the 13 parks, or the $3.3 million that we need to get into the design phase and start the phase 2 of this project.
Okay, can you share with, not right now, can you share out of the 4.4, I know you have used up 1.1, 1.2.
Right.
Can you give us, email us on how that was broken down in terms of parks, and also the rest, how are you divvying it up?
I'll say yes, we can do that. We had we did that a while back last spring, I think. And so we can resend that. I do want to say that, add that in about a week, bids come in, right?
Next week.
So next week we are getting the bids on the ARPA phase 2 project. So, what we provided in an info memo per park, and I can resend that to everybody tomorrow as well. Last spring, it will change a little bit because of what, the contractors bid certain amounts on certain parks, and sometimes where they'll put their money more on one part of the bid than the others. So I guess in summary, tomorrow I'll resend the info memo on what we had budgeted for every park and combined in ARPA phase 1 and phase 2. So we'll get that back to the mayor and city council tomorrow. And then in about a week, we'll get the bids. And so we'll know exactly how much is on each park when we come to council on March 9th. And if there's any savings from the bid as well, we can discuss where to invest those savings.
There is a time constraint in terms of money, ARPA. And are you comfortable, you're just getting the design now? I mean,
So the ARPA requires that we have the ARPA funds obligated or contract. So by the end of this year, so we'll have by next week, we'll have it contracted, so we'll meet that requirement. And we have to expend the ARPA funds for the project by the end of 2026, I believe.
Correct, so we have to have it under so the ARPA phase 2 is, assuming council approved the contract on March 19th, very soon thereafter, will be under contract for the ARPA money. If there,
Yeah, I don't wanna lose a penny of that ARPA money, that's all I'm saying.
agreed.
And let's move on to, I didn't see at the CDBG, there was a request for roof replacement or roofs maintenance from the library and the terrace garden. Those two, based on the contract we have with them, we are obligated as a city to do them. And we know that CDBG funds will not be sufficient to cover those costs. I don't see it in the CIP.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll address it quickly and then ask Michael to follow up. So for Terrace Garden, it's my understanding that we don't have any obligation for Terrace Garden. However, we do have an obligation, as you mentioned, for the library, that because the structure is essentially ours at the library and our joint use agreement we're responsible for most of that, the structure and the exterior for the library, and then the county operates the library and does the interior. And so, Michael, I don't know if we put anything in the proposed budget for the library.
About that, because I was told otherwise last night.
I will verify. It's my assumption that we have no legal responsibility for funding a terrace garden. However, I will verify that and we will follow up with a note to all the mayor and city
And the
council.
library is confirmed.
The library is confirmed. Renee and I took another look at it after the meeting and it is clear that we're responsible for the exterior. And Renee already knew that. I read it with her and she shared me the language. But yes, on the library and then on Terrace Garden, we will follow up with that confirmation.
And there's a big ticket item on main stage, the lighting. Have we even explored the solar lights? The solar lights, when we went to the conference, we were told it's $3,000 per post and there's no underground construction. And can we look into that instead of spending $500,000?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and look into that. Currently, we always did a very traditional decorative street lighting project. That's what we currently have as a conceptual design. So we'll look into that option.
Yes.
As we move forward.
Okay.
And I just want to add, right now, we're not proposing any general fund dollars for that. We have a $500,000 federal grant and our estimate is we need another 1.9 million and we're asking for federal and state monies for that right now, but we will definitely look into the solar.
But if the solar works, I mean, why spend money? And it works with other cities too. Can you give us an update once you guys do the research? That's all I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on what Vice Mayor had mentioned. When we did go to the conference, they did have state-of-the-art lighting that uses solar energy, and you didn't have to do any underground DB infrastructure. So that's great that you're going to look into that. Can you put up slide 13? That's the one that has the park priorities. And I think it was slide 13. And I recall when Vice Mayor had asked me to go look at Senate Park and it was really bad. So I'm just concerned with why. So can you explain the red ones and the blue ones? The red ones are the high priority ones?
So the parks in red are considered per the Parks Master Plan is considered critical conditions. The ones in the blue are in poor condition and the green is in the fair condition.
Okay, so and Senate is not on there, so.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it's a thing, okay, I see it, okay. So it is one of the priority ones, okay, that's good, because I was going to recommend if we could move some of the other ones, but it's already up there, so priority. But I'm still not clear why you have to wait to phase 2 instead of phase 1.
Sure, the projects in phase two. So the total budget for the phase one projects was, as I think was mentioned, about $1.1 million. That consisted and mostly, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, mostly of projects that didn't need a lot of design work and could be done, bid out and done pretty quickly. Projects that needed a lot more design work because improvements are more extensive were put into the phase two project. The good news is the bids have been out on the street for a month. They're coming in next week, and assuming everything goes well with the bids, we'll ask for council to award it on March 19th and start construction a month or two thereafter.
So it's in the pipeline. That's great to hear. Okay, thank you. And does anyone else have any comments? We have Councilmember Bartolo.
Thank you, Mayor. How do we put money in the general fund? What are the sources?
Michael, I'll ask, just to kind of ask you if I can confirm your question. I think what you're asking maybe is, we have general fund money that comes into the CIP.
It has nothing to do with the CIP.
Oh,
So
okay.
how do we fund the general?
Sure.
I'll ask a question related to the CIP.
What is this?
So in our operating, on our last study session for the operating budget, if you'll recall, our finance director Lawrence showed that our largest source of income is the property tax, and then the sales tax and other revenues, and then we have fee income that comes in, as well as a couple of other sources. Which one? TOT. The TOT, of course, is another big source, and then also measure revenue.
Now here's the relation. So we look at our projection for the next 5 years, and we do have priority for 24 and 25. I've seen that some of the projects, not just these years, but for the next 5 years, some sources are the general. So do we have a percentage on how much of these projections, 24, 25 and 24 to 29, are we using out from or sourcing it from the general fund?
Varies from year to year. So the amount of general fund that comes into, I guess, what we call the general CIP, general government CIP, varies from year to year, right? Depending on the revenues that come in, and they go down according to the waterfall policies.
And I just want to add, Warren, please feel free to jump in as well. I do want to add that is technique sometimes an organization use when there's a general fund shortfall to possibly not do that annual allocation to the capital. That does come with long-term consequences if you're not repairing your facilities. It just makes the general fund challenge worse in the future. But Warren is on the line. So if there's
I understand. My only question is, as we project our CIP program, right? I'll go to the bottom line of my question. Maybe you can understand it more. So we have the immediate project for 24, 25 that needs to go. And we have a projection from 24 to 29 that are budgeted or non-budgeted, right? And each project on those two timelines are either available, non-available, like the 54 million that you're projecting that there's no source at all. And that are those priority that needs to go is 24, 25. My only question is, since some of those projects that we projected are coming and forced out from general fund, how could we now make sure that if we spend portion of the general fund to this CIP projection, our sources initially stated that the OT, sales tax, property tax would be enough to cover our projection for the next 5 years.
Hey, council member, what I'm hearing, and I don't hope I'm hearing it correctly, is that how do we make sure the general fund can cover what our capital needs as well? Right now it's going to be short. The general fund alone definitely can't cover our capital needs. In the CIP budget that you're looking at this evening, we don't have an out year projection Right now, we assume the general fund for the years 2 through 5 isn't gonna give anything more to the CIP. Although on an annual basis, we do try and put money towards it.
Okay, let's be specific, let's be visual, it's on page 20, I think that's the slide. 17, 18, 19, 20. This one. That one. This one. Oh, 2 more pages down, 20. 25, 26,
Okay, the one with the gap of funding. This one,
21, 21, and 23.
right, so if you look at the bottom of the page, you're on page 31, I think.
you're wrong way.
Yeah, you're going wrong. Right there.
One more.
That one over there.
I have it at page 20, that's 22.
And then go up to.
Go back to.
Go back. One
Back
and
to.
two.
There.
So here, so you are recommending using portion of the general fund. And on the other slides, where the specific CIP projects, you have it source, let's say from a grant, from this, and some are from the general fund. So that's my question, how much of percentage are we using portion of the general fund as you are recommending to the projected CIP projects that we have in 24-25, you said that it's very need to be done, and the projection of year 2024 to 2029, which also have a recommendation using portion of the general.
So in 24-25,
There's a slide, maybe if we can have visual on that.
This one.
That's the overall.
right,
Right. The specific ones where it has a portion where it says source of.
or so, individual projects.
Right.
Individual
Right.
projects.
If you look at the individual projects, some of them are funded by the general fund. So the question is, how
I'm
much?
talking about these individual projects. here?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll
That
go, let me go all the way to the end here. And this is a slide that we like to show. Is what projects are funded by general.
Right, so yes.
So we have 11 projects for roughly 4.7.
So that 4.7 source is from the general fund.
That is from the general fund, correct? So it's roughly what's 5 divided by 36, about 20%. 15-20%.
15 to 20% of the projected CIP programs will come from the general fund in a tune of 4 million, is that?
Oh, no.
4 million. So that 4 million, do we have it readily? And if the answer is yes, would that still put our general fund into best practices? And if it's not, are we able to replenish it with the sources that we had mentioned, as we projected from the last presentation?
So this 4.4 million we will have for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
So in fiscal year 24-25, we have to have a balance sheet. That's the year that we find. Everything beyond the first year is based on projected available funding that we guys know of.
Projected funding from the general fund. I'm only talking about projects that will be sourced from our general.
So we don't project the general fund in our capital budget unless we have it on hand.
Mm.
We usually expense most of the general fund into the project need, because so many projects will compete with that fund and that first year funding. Then we go into the next fiscal year, and after we go through the reserve policies, the operating budget, there's usually a waterfall that gets replenished into the general fund. So that varies from year to year.
Okay.
So, and then we evaluate the project request again, from year to year. I think,
we're saying is that the 4.6 million that's shown here was what was left over or came into the general CIP fund from last year's operating budget. It was essentially allocated from last year's budget.
Yes.
So, and that's sort of where the CIP program starts, is that once last year's budget is closed and there's a certain amount of money that's up that goes through the waterfall, that 4.6 came into the CIP fund. And so it was available, and then that's where Michael will take that as well as the water fund, the sort of fund together.
Right, put the program. All right, so those are waterfall from last year's budget, and so we're not touching the going forward budget.
Or rather than saying leftover, it's more that it was allocated through the policy, the funding policy by the council to fund the CIP for these projects. So if you had a year when you didn't have a surplus, it would go through the waterfall, then there wouldn't be any money that would go into this. But the CIP program was put together in a much different way. We were very fortunate that we had money that would go into the waterfall that could fund the program this year.
And this 4.6 is currently budgeted.
Correct. That's correct.
And we don't have 26 to 29 just yet.
That's correct. That's the other slide with the unfunded projects. That's why that number is so large, is we don't yet know where they would be funded. And then ideally, we would have a large surplus, or at least an adequate surplus. And then over the next 5 years, each year, a portion of that CIP would go into this fund, as well as the other dedicated funds for water or sewer streets to go into those programs.
Okay.
If I might add one thing, and I don't want to go into territory, you might have to correct me on this, because for example, this year, one of the strategies that we employed is we had a number of large ticket items that were related to city facilities. Rather than using CIP funds for those, we worked together with the department directors as well as with Michael to identify the city has a specific facilities fund that could be used for those items. So we tapped into those funds so that it would free up the CIP funds to be used for other projects that you see on this list. Is that the correct way to describe that?
That is correct.
Right, I think that's where I'm driving at. If we can save CIP fund, general fund, and have other sources, not just to maintain best practices and standards on what our general fund should be with regards to reserves, but also to save money that we can use for some other projects in the general fund. So yeah, I noticed, as Ned said, that most of the projects are going to buildings, structures, right? So what's the percentage of our CIP funds, our projection for the next 5 years, that is dedicated other than structures? Right, that can go down and can be felt by the community. I know, we have to change our air conditioning and stuff like that, but what's the percentage that goes to the park, goes to improving the streets, sidewalk?
Are you looking from 5-year budget or the 1-year budget?
The 5-year.
Okay, so here in the 5-year budget, so we're broken down into basically 6 categories. The first category, which is communities, really related to building infrastructure. So you kind of see that we're looking at, we need about $25 million. 25. And it's followed by parks. This category is dedicated to the parks, infrastructure, then followed by streets. And then we break it down the utilities into 3 categories, water, sewer, and storm. As you can see, community is about 25 million, parks are reckoning about 20 million, 18 million. Streets is always a big number. The large projects infrastructure, 76 million, and then water is a big price tag with sewer. And then storm is a very low number because of the limited funding that we have. There's also a big infrastructure need that we need.
So which project category would be replacing the roof of the library or improving the
That would be
structure of the police department?
That would be under the community.
All right. So yeah, I think that's where my question is. So community in its common meaning. That's my question. Community means going back to the people, So we're saying that 25%, that's roughly 10%
10%, yes.
of our CIP budget goes to the community. And out of that 10%, how much really will go to the street paving so that, you know, anybody in Milpitas would enjoy driving?
Councilor, well, before Michael answers the question about how much of the percentage goes to street, I want to make sure to clarify that the community category is mostly the structure, the building structure category. So there, I mean, obviously, you know, everything in here is for the community, especially the water and the sewer, and to provide safe sewer and water services for them. But the just as on here, the dark blue where it says community, that is mostly buildings or other infrastructure that doesn't fit in one of the other categories neatly. There are like the financial management system is in community as well. So for streets, the 31% of the 243 million is for streets.
Okay, amazing.
And then I think there is something where in that community category, one of the biggest items is the community center. And one of the biggest needs is we have the community center, which was built in the early 80s, I think, and has barely been 82 and has barely been touched since. And that's something that we also applied for a $3.5 million grant from the state for that we hope to hear the results of in a few months.
So on a practical question, so we're replacing a lot of infrastructures in buildings, right? Do we get something out of those scraps? Let's say we change some, we sell them and hopefully generate something for something that would hopefully, you know, lessen the 58 million. Is that accounted for? Is that some?
It all depends. So if you're doing a new project, and you're replacing aging infrastructure, it's probably going to go straight to the disposal, and there's really no recovery cost on that because of the age of it. Maybe you'll be able for aging probably furnishings, you can recoup that, but the percentage of recovering cost of aging infrastructure is fairly low. Probably, I would say probably more recovery than fleet than any other aspect of the infrastructure. But from a construction standpoint, you're probably not going to get too much of a recovery cost.
Right. Recovery costs on, yes, those materials, but how about those programs? How about those hardware computers? How about those blowers from the HVAC? No, at least if we explore that, every counts.
I agree. And one thing that if there is a project, especially if you're moving a lot of dirt around on a big renovation project, sometimes the contractor will, if they're able to recycle some of those materials, they would include the deduct to the city in their bid for that. In those types of situations where something is very recyclable. So it's definitely something we'll continue to keep in mind as we design our projects and things out the bid.
Just trying to think practical. Yeah. Following the thought of the vice mayor, I have that on to the roof of the library. Where are we sourcing the costs in the production?
Which
Pretty budgeted.
we don't have any money in the proposed budget for the library roof. So if we don't get it out of the CDBG process, we'll have to look in a future budget cycle or a budget process for that money. But right now, there's no money in this proposed CIP for the library roof.
Yeah, I agree. So all I thought that it has some funding source, and in the last council meeting when we did the CDBG, you know, we had applied.
So excuse me, Michael's going to correct me on my last name.
Okay.
The last year, the
Because
library.
I think I saw this.
Yes, the library was funded last year.
Right.
For I think 200,000.
Mhm.
And I think it's going out to bid here very shortly.
What happens if we get the CDBG?
You replace the general fund money.
Okay, so that's what I meant. So if we, and I understand, this is a product of few months of very talented staff trying to project this. We're just poking some ideas so that we can incorporate it. But yes, so like that, if we can find some more, and I believe CDBG still have left percentages for CIPs, maybe we can add more to save some of our general fund money. I don't know what else, but we just saw 200,000 should get that CDBG, right? Just a thought. So another one is I saw a CIP project, last one. Be patient. The Calaveras Gateway. That one. Oh, yeah. You'll see that. Oh, this is just a study, not even putting anything. Oh, that's the main street, sorry. It's the Calaveras Gateway.
The first line item right there.
The
Milpitas Gateway Main Street Impact Fee Study.
So I thought I saw something about the Calaveras being the gateway. Did we,
Oh, I think it was part of this. I mentioned that in my presentation.
okay,
I think it was had to do with this impact study. What was the question there already?
so I think it's something else. It's specific to the Calaveras.
Okay. Right there. Last one.
It's okay, maybe you're right. It's probably the main thing. So that 600,000 is just to study, an impact study on what we can do with the Milpitas Gateway.
I could provide a little more
Some
information.
lights.
So the project has two components, and to be eligible for the grant funding, it couldn't just be a study. Although the study is an important part of it. So for the metro specific plan, we have an impact fee already, and we are in the process of updating that. We want to implement a similar type of impact fee to collect money from developments and ultimately make public improvements. So we have to do a study for that. But the reason why that dollar amount is a bit higher is also because we also want to do a, some places call it a sense of place plan, but you can think of it as a master streetscape plan for Main Street. So the gateway plan will provide higher level policies, whereas this streetscape plan will provide details for the improvements. Also identify all the improvements that are needed, and then the impact fee could help pay for these improvements, which is why we thought it made sense to put them together.
And here's another roof, the community center roof renovation. Maybe if there's some more on the CDBG, we can apply on that. Thank you.
We'll talk
Thank you,
again.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Right. Let's just take on. Please.
Thank you, Councilmember Barbato. Is there anyone else? Councilmember Lin.
Michael, would you go back to slide 14? The notable projects. Yes. This is just to clarify, the bicycle improvement project design, is that the same thing as the money that Alex Levy, as I remember, funded?
Yes, it is.
Would you also clarify HOV lane improvement design? 237.
Sure, no problem. So that project is being administrated by BTA. They're going to be doing HOV lanes on 237 in my correction here in the westbound lanes. that lead up into Oncology Boulevard and also off ramp. I think it also extends the HOV lane to 880.
And since that's Measure B funded, we have a 10% required match, and so we're only paying our 10%, and VTA is paying the rest out of Measure B.
So if we're paying 10%, do we also get 10% of the revenue?
Oh, no, we don't. That's a good question.
That's my question. Thank you.
And Councilmember Barbadillo.
Yeah, that's one comment, because it keeps on coming about recycle. You know, way back, a few years back, in my first term, I forgot what's it, but it was the draining the water on the pond we had at the back of the city hall. And I remember, it will cost, if I remember, it will cost 90,000 to drain that. And I made a suggestion at the time, you can check the records. I said, why don't we just use the water to clean our storage? And I think that materialized and we saved 90,000. So those kinds of things that, they're going to be replaced anyway. And let's try to be innovative and save another 90,000. Things like that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? I'd like to go to page 21. Slide 21. Okay, that one. So on the streets, so I'm on the transportation subcommittee, and we were told that most of the monies that are for streets get grant monies, right? So is that 31% include those grant monies?
So the 32%, that's just the percentage of projects of the streets, the percentage of 32% is the percentage of the overall number of projects. So, but the streets are funded by gas tax, Measure B, SB1. Some general fund, but very limited. And then probably tax.
Yes, because it's the highest one there, 76 million.
And so majority of these projects are big ticket item projects, such as the POC, which is like a $25 million project. That would be supported by the task fee right now, but there's insufficient for that project. So we are looking for grant opportunities to fund that project. Just recently, we're about to apply for a raise grant this coming week. Hopefully, we can get some money from that grant. It's a highly competitive grant. The other funds that support the streets are typically, like I said, gas tax, Measure B, SB1, PDA, the task, and also vehicle registration.
So that's the 31%, but those are the projects.
The number of projects.
That's a lot.
That's a good clarification, Mary. Some of this is paving, but a lot of this is those major pedestrian overcrossing projects and vehicle overcrossing.
So to give you, of that $76 million, we're projecting roughly that we need about $20 million for street resurfacing over the next 5 years. So, that's a good chunk of what you're seeing up there. And those projects are funded by Measure B, SB1, and vehicle registration. Make that, that minimum annual investment that we want to do in the streets.
Right, and so during the transportation subcommittee, we were told that 71 PCI. However, there are other cities that have 80 and even 90. Right, so we had made the recommendation I know staff had made the recommendation of 70, keep it at 70 good, but we had made the recommendation, subcommittee for 80. So I don't know if that's part of that or.
Mayor, we haven't included the additional need to get to 80 in this projection yet. That's definitely, we could, it would just increase the unfunded need. We absolutely agree that, you know, it's good that we're at a 71 pavement condition index, but we're almost at bad. And if we, and our projections show that if we continue to invest the $4.5 million annually in street resurfacing, that we will just pretty much stay at 71. And if we end up going below 70 on a citywide average, that's not what we want here in Milpitas. And so we do want to look for either a one-time funding, so that one of these years we can really do some catch-up work in the summer, or we'll continue to look to see if there's an additional $500,000 or $1 million annually that we can add to that $4.5 million that will start getting our PCI up away from that 71 and a little closer to the 80. And so we don't know where that additional money, we don't have that additional money yet for this upcoming proposed budget, but it's high on our minds and we want to continue to look for it.
Yeah, and you know, the community, they really care about their streets, and with all the rains, and you'll notice lately there are cracks and asphalt is coming off because of the heavy rains. So that's why one of the reasons why we were recommending the 80. But Vice Mayor?
The reason why that is so critical. The reason why that's so critical, because the streets, they're so visible to the residents. And they're impacted if they're, you know, get a flat tire. It's really like a measure of how we do. The way I see it, I mean, the streets, they use it. And if we just keep maintaining at 71, we need to shoot a little higher. We can't just be complacent about it. We need to do something else. We need to do more. I don't want us to be complacent. I want us to move forward. And that's the challenge for you guys. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
What we can do is we could increase the target in our proposed CIP to a higher number. It will show a higher unfunded need, but it will be that goal that we will have. Christian.
Yeah, it'll be a goal.
I'd just like to elucidate on this topic a little bit. The highest agency with the PCI is Cupertino, PCI of 84. The second highest, I believe, might be Orinda. So if we were to try to go from 71 to 75, 76, 5 basis points would require twice the annual investment. So we would have to identify another $4.5 million a year to spend to raise it 5 basis points. If we wanted to really try to achieve a PCI in the low 80s, we would need to 3.5 times the annual investment. So just to show that even what seems like modest incremental upticks will require exponentially more funding allocations.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, I think we got that from the presentation. It will take $19 million to be at the 90 where Cupertino is. And that's a dream. And we're realistic. We know we're not going to achieve that. But what I'm saying is, and I think the mayor too, don't be stagnant. Shoot a little higher.
It's just a goal. You know?
Yeah.
It's a goal.
Yeah, I'm just trying to add a dollar cost to each percentage point or basis point that we would wish to achieve.
Thank you. The other, you go to that slide where we were talking about the wells. Was the list, yeah, that one.
Okay.
So, why are we having, this is for the new well over there on,
That's correct.
so my question is, are we using the one that we have already at the Pines? And if we're not, why are we upgrading this well? We haven't even used the one at the Pines.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Pinewood Well is a regulated standby or emergency well. The Title 17 requirements state that a standby well can only be used 15 days a year.
15?
Yes. and cannot be used for any more than 5 consecutive days at a time. So we either use it one day 15 times or as much as 3 times for 5 consecutive days. It also has age, there are changes to the regulations that may impact the annual ring to the well and the casing to the well if we wanted to convert this to a full-time production well. It hasn't been used in so many years. So a lack of activity for water and sewer assets is worse than actually using that equipment on a regular basis. So to maintain equipment, it would be preferable to have it in operation rather than have it dormant for many years. So what's happening right now is we're looking at the cost to upgrade the facilities to Pinewood Well. That would be our first step. And then the second step would petition to have that well convert to a full-time production well. That has also operational impacts. We need to have staff that has a T2 certification. It upscales our regulatory, our permit obligations. And all of this will be in advance and consecutive also with the exploration of McCandless well. So those are the two differences between the two. The idea would be that both Pinewood and McCandless would ultimately become full-time production wells.
But they're so expensive. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's why I'm just wondering, if we haven't been using the Pine well, why are we going to the McCandless one? And also we have San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, we have the TECHG, we also have Santa Clara Valley Water, that have 2 sources already. And we have 3 wells, right? Or just 2?
I've seen documents that suggest 3 wells long-term. The third would be Curtis. I'm not sure how I feel or where we are with Curtis well just yet, but I should note that yes, we do obtain water from 2 wholesalers. Should there be a catastrophe that would impair the transmission system at either HHE or Valley Water, we would have no water source whatsoever. So while it may seem like it's a costly endeavor to have what would be production wells, they would also help us be resilient should something occur. The McCandless well is also a requirement to serve build out of the metro area. If we did not have a McCandless well, we would be required to have a 6 million gallon reservoir tank, which would cost more than the actual production of the well itself. So we gain twofold. It's more cost effective to have a production McCandless well, which would only require a 2 million gallon reservoir as opposed to 6. We'd also have a footprint issue. Where do we find that land? But the other benefit is we have a resiliency. Should something occur, we can provide some nominal amount of water to the community.
You know, I'm glad you clarified that, because we don't know that it'll cost more to do a tank, and also that it's a requirement for that project at that site. So thank you for that clarification, because it makes sense. So, okay, I'm done with my questions for now. Is there anyone else who has questions? So is that anymore?
No, thank you very much.
Yes. On to the announcement then.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no other.
And council members, any more announcements? Thank you. So now the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, staff.